Hey folks, we're about to start another episode of Ask Us Anything about electrochemistry. But before we begin, because we have some extra time, there are a few things I'd like to go over first. While we're waiting for the live stream to start, type your question into the chat. The sooner we get your question, the sooner we'll be able to answer it when the live stream starts. We usually try to answer questions in the order that we receive them, but it's definitely possible that we get so many questions that when your question comes up, we're out of time. If you are a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 YouTube member, you do get priority in us answering your question. You also have the opportunity to join us on the stream to either share slides or talk to us in person about your specific electrochemistry research questions. If you are a Tier 1 or Tier 2 member on our YouTube channel, you will find in the community post the link and password to join us on our broadcasting platform. We get a lot of questions about electrochemistry, whether it's through our YouTube comments, webinars, email, phone conversations. We get lots of questions from people about electrochemistry. And sometimes responding to a YouTube comment or trying to describe a cyclic voltammogram over the phone isn't always the easiest way to teach or describe electrochemistry. That's why we created this live stream. In the Ask Us Anything About Electrochemistry live stream, you can ask us any questions you have about electrochemistry, and we can use better tools and take more time to describe some of these electrochemical processes to help you with your research and understanding of electrochemistry. Now, in our time of doing this live stream, we've observed that if you ask a very specific question, we might not be able to answer it. It'll be a little bit too specific for us. On the other side, if you ask a very broad question and you're interested in just a very broad understanding of cyclic voltammetry, we have separate tools, we have other resources to help you. So we do have a YouTube video on cyclic voltammetry, an introduction to the subject. And if you're interested in more of a long-form course on, say, electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, we have a 5-part EIS webinar series for our Tier 2 YouTube members that you can access at any time. Now, if you weren't aware, Pine Research Instrumentation is a company that produces a wide array of high-quality electrochemical research equipment, from potentiostats to electrodes, electrochemical rotators, cells, different types of accessories. Pine Research has been supporting electrochemistry research and teaching for decades. Recently, we have developed new electrochemical simulation software called Aftermath Live. Aftermath Live is an online streaming platform where you can simulate popular electrochemical techniques like cyclic voltammetry. It's a powerful research tool, as you might simulate a cyclic voltammogram to support an electrochemical mechanism for your redox reaction that you're studying. But Aftermath Live and cyclic voltammetry simulation is also a very powerful tool when it comes to just learning electrochemistry. In fact, in previous episodes of the live stream, we have used Aftermath Live and our simulation software to answer some of the questions that you have. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can get a 10% discount on your first month of the basic and research editions of Aftermath Live by using the coupon code PINEYouTube10 when you're at checkout. Aftermath Live is a powerful tool and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Go to aftermathlive.com to check it out. Link is in the description below. Our live streams are normally on Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. They normally last about 2 hours, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. If you miss the live stream, you'll always be able to watch it on our YouTube channel, and in the description we put timestamps for every question that was asked. This way you can look through the description and find the questions that are most relevant to your research and then watch those at your leisure. Also, we apologize in advance if we mispronounce your name. If on a YouTube channel you can put anything you want as a name. It could be a Pokemon, it could be a string of numbers. But if we call you out and we accidentally mispronounce your name, we apologize in advance. Lastly, please do not spam the chat. We've had numerous instances of people either talking about inappropriate things or constantly filling the chat up with some kind of spam. We will remove you if you do that. Let's keep the chat very clean and just talk about electrochemistry. Sometimes it takes a while before we're able to answer your question. So if you keep typing your question into the chat and spam the chat, then we will remove you from the chat. But if it's been a while and we may have forgotten about your question, one message as a gentle reminder is all that's required. All right, I think that's all of the housekeeping things. Now, let's start the live stream.
All right, we made it.
Yeah, we're here. Welcome, everyone.
I don't think we've been in the same room for like a while. And this time I don't have, the green screen next to me. So the illusion is,
that's right.
we've
the illusion is not...
destroyed the illusion. We can't even pretend we're in the same room. It's very disappointing.
We can't have the double thumb thing like we had the last time.
That was it. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Double thumbs, let's go!
That's so fun. Why is that so fun? It's like a 6-fingered hand with 2 thumbs. It's fun.
I know.
I think it's
welcome everybody to another episode of Ask Us Anything About Electrochemistry. We're going to get to your questions as soon as possible. I'm feeling a lot better. Still a little bit of a cold from last time, but
I don't want to get sick, so I've made sure that you are kept under shrink wrap in several 100,000 miles from me. That's like around the earth many, many times. Just to be sure.
Just to be sure.
Yeah.
Just to be sure. All right, so we've got some questions coming in. First question that came in is, sir, tell me about SHE. Favorite. I can
talk about the Nernst equation.
Yes, that's right.
Very exciting.
Well, actually, no, I have I have some slides about SHE and reference electrodes in particular. This is from a workshop that I gave not too long ago, but so SHE stands for the standard hydrogen electrode. So hopefully everyone can kind of see. This is a picture. This is a picture, just a snippet from Wikipedia. It's the standard electrode potential table, and here in the middle we have hydrogen. 2 protons plus 2 electrons is in equilibrium with hydrogen gas, and it has a potential of 0. And every other potential based on the redox reaction is kind of referenced to this. So there's actually a couple interesting things, because I won't spend too much time on this because we do have other questions. But there are kind of 3 things. There's the normal hydrogen electrode, there's the standard hydrogen electrode, and then there's the reversible hydrogen electrode, all of which are very similar. And most often, the normal hydrogen electrode, NHE, and the standard hydrogen electrode, SHE, kind of get confused often. So the normal hydrogen electrode is the potential of a platinum electrode in one normal acid in a solution that has 1 atmosphere of hydrogen gas bubble. So it helps maintain this equilibrium reaction from occurring. It is a completely physical thing. You could set up a normal hydrogen electrode in your lab, and it would work great. Now, the standard hydrogen electrode, which is what your question asks and you want some clarification on, is technically a theoretical potential, because when you actually put this reaction, there's no just protons by itself. Protons usually have some kind of anion, so if you use a chloride like sulfuric acid or hydrochloric acid, or if you use sulfuric acid, you'll have some anions in solution, and that can affect the potential in small ways. So the SHE is really a theoretical potential of a platinum electrode that's under standard conditions, that assumes no interactions with anions from the acid. So that is what the standard hydrogen electrode SHE is. The last thing, just to at least mention, is that there's something called the reversible hydrogen electrode. This is often, it's the same kind of system, but often it is a pH-dependent electrode. So instead of just being at basically pH 0 in strong acid solutions, it may be at a higher pH, and as a result, the potential of the RHE, reversible hydrogen electrode, is equal to the SHE plus 59 millivolts times the pH. So it can change depending on what the pH is. But that's it. That's the standard hydrogen electrode. That is the amount of time that I want to spend telling you about the hydrogen electrode. And if you have more questions, let us know.
It's probably the right amount of time that anybody should spend on the hydrogen electrode. And the only thing I would add about the hydrogen electrode from my own personal, experience at this point, which is 500,000 years ago, because I'm, already a fossil, is that the one that you showed in the chart, right? That you can do in your lab is the normal hydrogen, or you could say the RHE. The SHE is the theoretical one, or whatever. But even that is a huge pain. So at least in my impression, in the literature, I guess this is the main point I want to make as far as it relates to SHE, NHE, and RHE. I have never, it has never occurred to me that anybody differentiates between these in the literature. For instance, when they report a voltammogram, often people will put volts versus AgCl or calomel. So that's normal. That's what reference electrode you use. But a lot of times people will normalize to the hydrogen, to make it measurable by other people, of course, other researchers, which makes sense. In my experience, I could certainly be wrong, and maybe there's more intentionality. But it seems to me, if you're looking at a paper and someone has normalized their data to the hydrogen electrode, you basically could throw a dart at a dartboard. You have a 1 in 3 chance that they wrote RHE or NHE or SHE. It's just these are used, and it's so somewhat right. There's certainly some interchangeability for the most part. Yes, with pH, the RHE would change in theory. The SHE is theoretical and the NHE is measurable. But even the measurable one it's finicky. It's difficult. You have to keep on bubbling hydrogen, usually over a platinum wire, and hope you don't run out of hydrogen throughout your experiment, and hope that the gas doesn't break up the interface and give you mixed results. It's a hard electrode to physically do. So all this is to say that that's a great explanation of the 3 difference, technically why they're different. But don't get too tripped up if you're reading literature and you see people report versus NHE and you're wondering, what is theirs versus RHE or versus SHE? It's most likely if you're reading a paper and they're showing any of those 3, they just picked the one that occurred to them. That's just I could be totally wrong, and there could be instances where someone is intentionally using SHE because it's a theory thing or whatever. But I don't get the impression most people differentiate between those. Do you? I mean, that's my impression.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right. I think a lot of people use them. The majority of people would use them very interchangeably. Yeah. I agree.
And most of the time they can be, which, to be fair, it's okay. But it's good. It's good for those of us unlike me who care about the theory of science and why things are the way they are. As an engineer, I just want it to work, but it is certainly good as a practitioner, a scientist, and an electrochemist to understand these terms that we use. So that was already too much about the hydrogen electrode, and I made it. So you're welcome, everybody. This next question, though, is a good one from Shabnam, other letters. Which, again, we already apologize for mispronouncing names, so there you go.
But we also thank you for joining as a Tier 2 YouTube member, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much, yes. So extra apologies that I did not properly pronounce your name. It's also small on my screen. That's my excuse.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm old and my eyesight's bad. Okay, anyway, this person's question says, hi, may I ask what is the electrochemistry behind why, when the temperature increases for batteries, the Nyquist shrinks and 2 semicircles merge? Is it about time constants? Sometimes, yes. Very, very possibly, yes, but that's not likely all of what's happening. And then their question, and how best can we model that? Okay. Right. So I guess I'll sort of draw for the sake of your question what it is that you're referring to as well. Let me share my PowerPoint over here. And so you're talking about a battery, right? So, condition one, let's just say at like room temperature, right? We have, let's say we have like semicircles. Sometimes you get 2, sometimes you get 3. Let's just say we get something like that, right? And then we have condition 2, let's just say T is elevated. We get some high temperature, right? And you end up getting kind of something like this. All right. Now, usually the interpretation of it's not just the Nyquist plot, to be clear. This is all the impedance data, but I understand why you're asking. Nyquist plots are the ones that people usually look to for the features like this. This first semicircle is usually from the SEI. And then this second one is either anode, cathode, or both, let's just say. So it depends. And then usually if we have a tail, that's something like diffusion, mass transport effects, Warburg, sometimes things like that. Okay. That if it's the anode or cathode or both, sometimes at certain states of charge, you might get 2 semicircles here, one for the anode, one for the cathode. Usually the anode is first, cathode is second, from left to right. Okay. Here's the point to make. Why do we get one semicircle here at high temperature? All right. So one reason could be, as you said, time constant. So what actually might be happening is I kind of have, almost like you could draw like deconvoluting, almost like 2 semicircles, but they're like, I'm drawing really poor semicircles. Just it's mostly because my art skills are terrible. But you could imagine if I like superimpose 2 semicircles, they would almost overlap. And so it manifests as one semicircle. And so it's like, okay, should I fit this with, one RC or RQ, or would it be 2, right? This would be 2 semicircles, but the time constant here. So this is R1, this is R2, this is C1, and this is C2. So in the case that R1, C1 is roughly equal to R2, C2, you get this situation. And that's because the semicircle, when the 2 processes have similar time constants because of whatever reason. Now, when you increase temperature, kinetics changes, not always the same for everything. So your anode, your cathode, your SEI, the speed at which these are taking place, what have you, may be very similar. And so that's why these are coinciding, right? That's one explanation for this. So one of the solutions to this is distribution of relaxation times, right? DRT. Sorry for the overlapping of things here. So that is one way to it's not really modeling, but what it'll do is you'll get a plot. It's something like modulus versus frequency. It's like, it's not phi. Do you know what they use? I can't remember. What's it's like something like that. I can't remember.
I don't know. It's a function.
I don't know.
Function of something.
Yeah, it's a modulus. The mathematics is really bizarre. I have a hard time with it myself, to be perfectly honest. But my point is, if you do DRT and you get like 1, 2 peaks, then that is telling you, oh, I have 2 processes here. But the distribution of relaxation times has the benefit of being able to, find these distinct peaks that tell you I have 2 processes. If the DRT gives you like, just 1 peak, then it would be like, oh, well, then there is only 1 process. So that's what DRT can help you understand. It can't necessarily help you model it from, from the circuit fitting perspective, like these RCs, because if you imagine it's one semicircle, there's basically infinite possibilities for the R's and C's. So it can be almost impossible to fit. But the DRT can help you know if there are at least multiple processes. Now, all that being said, another possibility for why you get fewer semicircles at higher temperature is because your battery is starting to fall apart. Okay, so one of the things that can happen at high temperatures is the SEI can decompose or fall apart, or some stuff like that can happen at high temperature. Now, it depends on exactly how high a temperature, depends on the battery. It's not like a guarantee. But if the SEI were to sort of fall apart or collapse or something like that, this semicircle might disappear. It might get absorbed. The process might become again sort of a similar one process or whatever, but there won't be any more resistance or capacitance through an SEI layer on on either your anode or your cathode. So that could be a bad sign at higher temperature. You also would want to look at, for instance, as the temperature is increasing, do you have a situation where, before, so at what do I use? These blue and red, I'll use the same colors to be consistent. So as my temperature goes up, did I start with this? Again, I'll just draw the same ones. And did I end up with this? So that would be something that might be a good sign, which is to say that as the temperature increased, maybe a little bit, the semicircle, I got only one, but it's smaller. So my charge transfer resistance, maybe my RCT at high temperature, is less than my RCT at high temperature. Excuse me, I said that backwards. My RCT at high temperature is less because sometimes at high temperature, the kinetics is better. So the charge transfer resistance is lower. So this might not mean my battery is falling apart. It might just mean that my battery is super fast. It's becoming harder to differentiate between different processes, something like that. But if instead I have the situation where I get a huge semicircle, that could be bad. Like now my resistance is growing because the SEI is collapsed. Maybe the electrodes are falling apart. Maybe the resistance is getting really high. Maybe it's generating a lot of heat. There's a lot of ways to interpret this. And so some of those things would be follow-up questions, for example, as a reviewer, or if I was looking at your data, you try to interpret some of these things, because in the context of batteries, increased temperature, again, could be something that's really great, could be improving the performance, increasing the kinetics, or it could be causing your battery to start, falling apart, could be headed towards thermal runaway if you're not careful. So some of those things are things to be aware of, and looking at your Nyquist plots specifically, and exactly what how high a temperature you're at can help lead to those things. So if you're only going from 25 to 40 degrees C, I wouldn't expect the battery to start falling apart. But if you're going to 100 C, 120, whatever, you're starting to get up there, yeah, you might start just, SEI could be falling apart, electrolyte could be evaporating. Some bad stuff might be happening. So good question. Feel free to follow up if you need anything else clarified, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think you made a lot of really good points. Also, what you even mentioned earlier, what is the state of charge also at each of these, besides is it 50% state of charge when you go from room temperature to higher temperatures? And then of course your question is really about the what's the electrochemistry happening that could make these changes in the Nyquist plots, and that depends on what kind of battery you're studying as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, all these things are important and are and yeah, let us know more, and maybe we can provide more information as time goes on.
Yeah.
Let's see. Looks like I just got a question from a good friend, Hob G. Hob G is asking, how would you determine peak current with a baseline that's not flat? This is a great question. So this is actually, it's kind of funny you mentioned this, because we've had numerous conversations.
Yeah, I feel like we just had We just had a heated internal company set of conversations about this, like somewhat recently, where we were all having our own opinions about how you should draw the baseline, this and that.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own opinions, you know.
Everyone's got their own opinion. So
what's the joke? You ask 4 PhDs, you get 5 opinions or something?
Yeah, you get 5 opinions or something. I'll share like a really quick thing. Basically, I'll just show you, you know, so everybody does things a little bit differently, but let's say we have a CV, right? So we got potential, we got current, and let's say it's kind of like this, and then we have our CV peak and kind of tilted. It's had a rough day. It's a little tilted, this CV. So your baseline's not exactly flat. It's kind of flat here, but it's kind of on an angle, and then you get this peak. So in aftermath, at least, you know, what we tend to do is we define, you know, we kind of leave it up to you as the researcher to figure out what that baseline is. But if I was looking here and I wanted to get what this current was, I wouldn't use this value, right? I would not just, you know, make a line and say, hey, this current is the correct, you know, that's the current to use, because it's on this sloping baseline and you need peak currents. You know, your peak current needs to be of that minus the baseline. So I might look at this and say, oh, I got, you know, here, I'm going to draw a baseline kind of, you know, this is going to define the slope of my baseline. And then from this peak potential from here to here, of course I can't draw, you know, exactly straight, but imagine this is at the top. This is now my current, right? So that would be the peak current for my that I use for data analysis. And similarly, if I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at this guy here, I might say, I think this is kind of, you know, this is kind of the baseline. Kind of goes like this, and then from here to here, that then becomes my peak anodic current, if you will. So this would be my cathodic, this would be my anodic. So that's one way of doing it. But voltammograms often are way more complicated. We were having I wasn't even actually part of this conversation, but like, let's say you have, you know, let's say you have that same kind of sloping baseline, but you have, you actually have two. You have two peaks, kind of like so. Right? How do I get this? You know, how do I get this guy here? Well, you know, we already know that there's this baseline. So how do I, and there's maybe not really that much space between here to accurately determine what this baseline is. So, you know, you may say, well, I think, you know, you might say this. So I'll make this in blue, for example. You might say, I know that this normally would go like this, right? This is my this is what my normal CV would look like, right? So, you know, this is what my normal CV would look like. So actually, I should actually kind of, the current should really be from here. You might say the current may actually need to be from here to here. Maybe I should have used red instead of blue. But it's like, this is actually what my baseline is, right? It's only the fact that these two you know, peaks are so close to each other, but maybe this should actually be what my current is. And you know, it's not here, you know, it's not like a sloping baseline like this, but it's just like the, you know, the extra current from that you know, forward sweep. You're trying to, you know, take that into consideration. And the nice thing about some of these is that we know that these are like diffusion controlled CVs. So we actually have some predictive power to determine like, oh, I actually kind of have an idea where this guy is going because it's a diffusion controlled reaction. So I kind of can predict where it's going to be. And that way I can determine like, oh, there's a square root dependence, 1 over square root of t dependence on the current. I could fit this to like a Cottrell type of plot. And then from that current value to here, that's what I would use as like my baseline, sort of say. So that's one approach. There's some other people who do like these kind of weird like curving baselines that, you know, they're non-linear, and they just say, yep, this is what it is. It just came up with like, oh, we identify that as a peak and this is the current. But, you know, this may be some other mathematical algorithm that's used to determine what this value is. So as Neil said, we had a heated debate, if you will, about how to determine the peak current from, you know, based on what the baseline is. And really, it's how do you determine what the baseline is? So hopefully, Habji, I've at least described to you kind of the simple case where it's like, oh, you know, the baseline can literally be drawn from the start to the end. But there are other cases where you have 2 voltammograms so close to each other that the peak currents, you know, you actually have to model the diffusion controlled response, like a Cottrell response with the first wave, and then from there determine like, oh, what's the peak current from that decay up to the next peak, instead of just a one flat on top of each other. So it's hard. I don't think there's an easy answer, Habji, for determining peak currents. This is a hard aspect of electrochemistry.
I think what surprised me when we were having our sort of internal company conversation about it was the level of passion, should we say, that some of our colleagues had about the method that one chooses to draw the baseline, because it just how you showed, you know, you could have it kind of go like this, or you could do it from the preceding one. It could kind of go down as a decay, or you could draw a straight line through it. Like there's options, and I don't know. I feel like you could come up with logical reasons why you might choose one or the other, as long as you're being consistent. You know, consistent from data set to data set, or scan to scan, or whatever. Just the level of certainty with which some people are like, it has to be done this way.
Yeah.
Maybe there's reason for that, and maybe people feel that way, but I feel like you might be hard pressed to get consensus. Just like in electrochemistry, we can't even get consensus on whether current should be positive or negative, and that's a binary, let alone how you draw a baseline. So good luck getting consensus on how to do so. I think it's very good what you did, which is to just provide a lot of, here's a few ways you can do it, and, you know, maybe search the literature, and, you know, you're a scientist, you're allowed an opinion too, you know, figure out what you think makes the most sense, and just be, you know, internal consistency, I would argue, is probably a good goal. Let's say, you know, if you're going to choose to draw your baseline a certain way, just make sure you draw it that way for every peak that you do. And then at least you're comparing, as we'd say, apples to apples, right? You're comparing, if you're, you know, your peak in one voltammogram or one part of a voltammogram is consistent with the peak from another one, because you're drawing the baseline similarly each time.
Nice. Oh, it also says the aftermath is great for determining the peak current. Glad that you
we appreciate it.
Yeah,
exactly. So our friend here has a follow-up from the Nyquist plot and everything here. So thank you for the explanation. Also, how can we perform operando EIS, for example, adding a DC bias, so we can have a clean final result? I've tried multisine excitation, but still at low frequency, everything is ruined. Yeah, that's a good point. These things are fundamentally fighting each other. If you're adding a DC bias for a battery, it's most likely current. I'm just making assumptions here, so you can correct me if you have a different situation. Most of the time, if you're doing impedance on a battery, you're doing it galvanostatically. Okay. And so the typically with a battery, it's charging it to a certain point or whatever. You charge it to 50%, you let it rest for some time, and then you take impedance with no bias. Like it's not open circuit potential because it's galvanostatic, but you can think of it that way. It's just open, zero current applied. It's you're just taking it at with no bias, right? The difficulty comes when you start applying a current. Again, I'm assuming galvanostatically, and then do your impedance around that. And the reason is that you are fundamentally violating the rules of valid impedance. It is not stable. Fundamentally, it's not. The system is not stable. You are changing the voltage of your battery actively under bias. So the ways to get around that are to not do low frequencies. So this is your question was, well, at low frequencies, it's ruined. Yeah. Because at low frequencies, it's taking a longer time. And the longer you're doing this experiment where it's already not stable and your baseline is moving, the worse your data is going to be. It's not going to be almost possible to get good data. I did some of this kind of thing when I was a postdoc. I did impedance of batteries under load, and I limited it to, I didn't go below like 10 kilohertz, maybe 1 kilohertz, to get simple probe kinds of results under load, but quickly. And so even though it's not stable, if you do really quick tests at high frequency, you can kind of just make the assumption that it was roughly stable during that time. And in particular, especially if you're within the like 30 to 70% state of charge, let's just say generally, the voltage is not changing tremendously under moderate load. So it's sort of stable enough, let's just say. Otherwise, though, I don't have a suggestion for you because I don't think you should be performing low frequency impedance on a battery under load. You just shouldn't. You can, but it's not impedance. It's just a sine wave, and then you can interpret that how you wish. But that's not impedance. It's fun. It's just fundamentally not impedance. The signal is drifting. It's moving because your system is not stable. I don't know that I can, in good conscience, try to recommend that. It just can't be done. It can't be done accurately. You could do a baseline correction and fudge the data. That would be sort of like lying. But it's not really fundamentally possible. So your better bet is to try pausing the charge-discharge process, waiting for it to stabilize, running impedance, and then continuing your charge-discharge if you have to do low-frequency impedance.
Yeah, it's kind of like with certain like electrochemical systems, like 3 electrode setups, non-battery, you can apply a potential at the region where the redox reaction is occurring and get good impedance data. But for batteries, you don't want to be charging and discharging it in the middle of its operation to get any EIS data. That's a very good point.
It's just not stable enough.
Yeah. So just a quick comment. We wanted to ask if we were coming to the ACS fall meeting in Chicago. I told them that I will be there. Neil will not be at the ACS fall meeting.
I will not be there.
But you will be in ISE in Australia. So
yes,
in September.
September, I think it's like the 6th. It's in that time frame. So in the first, for September, early September, I will be in Sydney, Australia, for the International Society of Electrochemistry ISE meeting. So if you are going to ISE and you're making the long trip over to Australia, it's quite a long ways from where we are in the United States. So it will be a long haul. But if you're making it there, come visit the Pine booth, and you can meet our Australian rep and meet me in person. And then I will be at the Electrochemical Society meeting, most probably in Calgary, Canada, at the end of October.
Yes. That's right. Yeah. So we always we do a fair bit of traveling the year. This is also one reason why we're not around in the office. So these are some of the places you can meet us in person.
Yes. As I always say to when people come up and they're like, "Hey, I saw you on whatever," I'm like, "Yes, I am also a real person." And
yes,
I'm a physical human being, and I exist outside of the computer screen, which is always fun. It's like you always get that moment. It probably happens to you all the time when we're at a conference and someone walks by and they kind of walk by and they're like, staring. And I'm like, I think they probably recognize us. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah. Don't be afraid. We're friendly. Mostly friendly.
Yeah.
But, come say hi. We like meeting people.
Yeah. So if you come to the ACS Chicago meeting, you can absolutely stop by and ask me as many questions as possible. I'll try my best to answer them. I might recommend personally. The ACS Chicago meeting is like the week of the 24th of August. I'd recommend coming on like a Tuesday, the 25th, or Wednesday, the 26th. That's when it's tends to be a little bit quieter, if you will, where I actually will have the time and patience and mental focus to answer some of your questions.
First day can be kind of busy. It's
yes,
it can be hard to turn it into a mini live stream,
Yeah, that's right.
For sure.
Yeah, you can always ask the questions here too. Just that's why we're here. But, but always meeting people in person.
Until then, it's a good time. If you have questions, type them into the chat. But there was this comment on one of our YouTube videos earlier in the week that I promised this person I would answer their question on the live stream and talk about it a little more thoroughly, just help to kind of talk things through. So this person's user was Al-Shaikh7, I think here. So I have it with two. It was a somewhat lengthy question for the number of characters you could put on the program here. So they said, sorry, that was the second one. This is the first part of the question. So they said, I have powdered samples of mixed transition metal oxides intended as a pseudocapacitor electrodes. I mixed them with graphite and Nafion, 5 weight %, and ethanol as a solvent to prepare the electrode ink. The transition metal oxide to graphite to binder weight ratio is 7 to 2 to 1. Then I deposited it on a polished glassy carbon surface, followed by drying at 65°C. The resulting thin film integrity is usually bad, and it peels off easily from the glassy carbon. I have tried hot and cold water sonication and combined with vigorous stirring. So the question was just basically, how do I do this better, or very vaguely what's going on. So the first plug that I always like to give is to this publication. I've shared this paper a lot, maybe not as much on this stream, although maybe a few times here and there. This is from a former colleague and friend of mine from the Naval Research Laboratory. His name is Yannick Garcini. And I love this publication because it's one of these, like, it's such an engineering paper. Like, it's just, why does, it's more about the process than the science, if you will, which is such an engineering thing to do. And it's beautiful. So basically this whole paper is kind of about making thin films. Especially I especially like it because they show our electrodes and rotators and stuff too. That's beside the point. The science of it is tremendous. So I would encourage you to look at this. He really talks about the procedure. For example, like he does a profilometer of the film and the surrounding Teflon, and I want to get to here. So he has kind of like when you rotate the disc when you're drying it, what's what it looks like as opposed to stationary. He talks about this being like, it's like a coffee stain sort of a film. When you're rotating, it's much more uniform as you're drying your solvent. So there's some of those things to keep in mind. This person talked about drying at 65 degrees C. I didn't mention whether the electrode was inverted and rotating or not or anything like that. So I would just first direct you to this paper here. So you can, I'll zoom in a little bit here. So if you're watching this later, this is the Journal of Electroanalytical Chemistry from 2011. And you can search for this, these authors. So Yannick is the one who, and Karen as well. Actually, I used to work with when I was at the Naval Research Laboratory myself. I highly recommend this paper. You take a look at it. So I wanted to mention that. Now, I'll stop sharing and just talk through a little bit of this. So I mentioned in my comment back to you, but I'll talk through it. One of the things that you mentioned was that you used 5 weight % Nafion. That's if that's what you use, you just use some of that stock solution that they usually sell it. It's just a big, like, at least when I was in graduate school, is like they get little containers stock solution of 5 weight % Nafion. That's 100 times stronger than you need. So what people do, what these films typically consist of, is creating a 100 times diluted Nafion suspension solution, right? So you take, 1 milliliter and 100 of that stock solution and create a 1.05 weight % Nafion. It's very dilute. That is the level of Nafion that is typically used in these films. So the first thought that I had when I saw this thin film recipe was you have way too much Nafion. And it feels counterintuitive, in a sense, because the Nafion is kind of like the glue that keeps the film together. But, if your ratio is not ideal in any way, it can certainly affect the adhesion of your film. And so I think it's entirely possible that you have way too much Nafion. So that's the first thing, is that you should probably dilute the amount of Nafion by 100. Okay. The second is that the procedure that you can try, that I used to use a lot more often, was instead of having one ink where I have, in your case, transition metal oxides, I use transition metal oxides as well. And then, binder, graphite for conductivity, and binder all in one in a solvent of ethanol or water or whatever, is to do 2 different inks. So one would be just, in this case, it's like you have a 7-to-2 ratio, maybe an 8-to-2 if you're adding up to 100%. Just make an ink consisting of your transition metal oxide and the graphite. So just the catalyst itself in whatever your solvent is. Sonicate it. It sounds like you've done cold, hot sonication. Typically cold sonication can sometimes help with the dispersion, but you're having trouble with the adhesion. So I wouldn't expect that to be the factor here. Whether you sonicate or have it well mixed or not will affect probably your active loading or how accurately how much mass of your material is there. But if it's not sticking in the first place, then it doesn't almost matter. You got to get it to stick first, right? And then you can worry about how much mass is there later. Because if it's all falling off, who cares whether it was well mixed? If it's not staying there in the first place, you've got bigger problems. So make that ink of just your catalyst. Invert your electrode. Again, hopefully you're rotating it kind of slowly while you're drying it. Make your droplet. Let it dry. You can just dry it at air temperature. Sometimes what I would do is I would put if there's in a hood, there's active airflow. You don't necessarily have to heat it. Especially if you have just ethanol as your solvent. Ethanol is pretty volatile. It'll evaporate pretty easily. Even water will evaporate fairly easily. Most people only heat electrodes when they use solvents that are really have really high boiling points. Something like NMP or something like that, or carbonates or other stuff. Some things don't boil until they're at 180 C or something. And so it just has really low vapor pressure at room temperature. It won't dry fast, and it's agonizing. Something like ethanol or water even will dry after not that long. And, just put a droplet of ethanol on the table, see how long it takes to evaporate. It takes like minutes at most. So I don't see why you really need to even use an oven in the first place. Personally, I don't think that's necessary. So dry it in air, rotate it, make it nice and kind of uniform. And then you've just got the fizzy-sorbed, dried catalyst there. Do a second droplet of 0.05 weight percent Nafion, same volume. So prepare a small vial with your Nafion suspension solution, dilute it 100x, and then put a droplet on top of your dried TMO graphite. Let that dry. So it's like your film, your catalyst is there, and then you have a second film with the Nafion that's on top that, again, is 100x diluted, but then it's like really gluing and drying it on top to keep it in place. I did that all throughout graduate school, and I had plenty of problems because it's electrochemistry, but I very rarely had films delaminate. They almost always were great. Like the film quality was good. Again, all my catalysts did not at all uniformly work. A lot of times my transition metal oxides were like really small nanoparticles and they didn't disperse well in the ink. I had such a hard time getting them sonicated and well mixed. That was a different problem. The film itself with that recipe that I just outlined was usually quite good. So I highly recommend doing that procedure. Just in my experience, the one pot ink with the Nafion included, even if you dilute it, seems to work a little worse. I don't quite know why. There's probably some reason for this. You might, the Nafion's not perfectly touching all the particles or well mixed enough. It doesn't make a smooth enough film, something like that. I don't totally know, to be honest. But the putting it separate does increase the time. It obviously takes a little bit longer because the Nafion has to dry. You have two drying steps, right? But it's worth it. The film ends up a lot better. So hopefully that's a good, a little more in-depth answer and talking this through. I could probably talk for another 20 minutes on thin film stuff. It's kind of something I, was pretty passionate. Took me a while to kind of get good at this when I was in graduate school, and it's definitely more of an art than a science. As I say a lot, it's something that getting good scientific results really depends on your ability, especially in this field of electrochemistry. When you're screening electrocatalysts for whatever reason with a rotating disc electrode, really depends on your ability to make a quality thin film. So don't discount the time that it's going to take you to figure out how to best do this procedure. It's really worth it. And you're going to want to do this probably with practice it with something like 10% platinum on carbon, like 10% platinum on Vulcan, like whatever, something standard. You can buy this. It's not too expensive. Usually powder or something like that, because it has you can know in theory, like if you do the procedure I just described to you with 10% platinum on Vulcan carbon, you'll know, you have a 5 milligram per milliliter suspension ink. You deposit 20 microliters. You just do the math. You get this many milligrams or micrograms, 10% of that. This is how this is like you'll know if you did this right. I have 43 and a quarter micrograms of platinum. Okay. And if I do my CV, I should get peaks and I should be able to check the ECSA. Like you can just do all of the analysis. That's really easy to verify by literature data, normalized by the surface area of your platinum, the mass of your platinum, all the things, right? And that will convince yourself that your film is working well. Because if you're just doing it with your own transition metal oxides, you get good performance, you get bad performance. Okay, well, is the good performance because your TMOs are great or because your TMOs are terrible? Or is it because your film sucks? It's like you don't want to have that question. You want to know that your film is great, and if the catalyst sucks, it's because it's a bad catalyst. Or vice versa, right? Like, don't leave yourself hanging with this knowledge. So practice the film with something you can really verify its performance and know that it's good as like a background, whatever you want to say. Then move transition, pun intended, to your transition metal oxide and do it with the with your catalyst that you're studying, and then see how they perform. So great question. Keep at it. rest assured, it's definitely a difficult thing to do. And I guess best of luck for you. So hopefully you see this later. I think this person said that they couldn't attend live, but they'd watch later. So hopefully they're watching later, and hopefully this helps you.
Nice. We did get a couple questions that just came in. This question from Sidby -X61 says chloride ionophore electrode with nonlinear potentiometric response for different concentrations. Can you please explain? Chloride ionophore 2 with PVC plasticizer ion exchanger in correct proportions. So I don't actually know too much about chloride ionophores. My general, just kind of quick research was that this is somewhat like an ion selective electrode that's selective for chloride ion. So the fact that you have a nonlinear potentiometric response isn't actually all that uncommon or unusual. Neil may joke with me endlessly about this, but you know, this kind of brings us to the Nernst equation, because
really,
when you're when you have when you're measuring the potential of something, even whether it's a reference electrode or it's a reference electrode or an ion selective electrode, even a pH meter. First off, we're dealing with activities, but even if you were dealing with concentrations instead of activities, you're not going to have a linear relationship. Your relationship is going to be more logarithmic, either a natural log or a log base 10. So I would be curious, if you found that if you took your data points, which were not logarithmic, if this was just, what was it? I don't even know how you would do this. Let's see, you have potential and then you have concentration. But then if you were to say plot, I'd be curious whether or not you actually got a straight line if you, so this is concentration, but if you had, say, the log or natural log of the concentration, C of whatever the chloride ion was, I would be curious whether or not you got more of a linear response if that was the case. And that also depends on, so that's one part of it. Another thing to think about and consider, and again, a lot of this is speculation just based on what you described. But if you're going from something like 0 to 1,000, in terms of concentration, like 0 molar to or 0 to like 1 molar, and you're looking at like 10 millimolar or 100 millimolar, and then you finally have like 1 molar of a thing, then I would expect that the voltage difference would adjust by 59 millivolts every order of magnitude change. And we're able to see, I would probably need to know a little bit more about the nature of the potentiometric response, but usually this is something like an open circuit potential. So you may also want to check on, the chloride ionophore, is just one part, right? There's the other electrode as well. So you do want to, if I am assuming there is some kind of problem with the mixture, right, some experimental issue, I might look to make sure that whatever my reference electrode is, to make sure that the other reference electrode is stable. That also needs to be very stable for you to have accurate measurements. So so those are the things that just kind of come to mind when I read your question. Is that like, oh, why don't you get a linear response? Well, you'll only get a linear response within a very, very small concentration window at best. But even from what we know based on fundamentals, changes in the concentration for potentiometric measurements are nonlinear. in general. They are based on the natural log or the logarithm, the logarithm of the concentration, and more specifically, even the activity. Whatever concentration of chloride ion, if it's either too small or too large, you may also have activity coefficient related issues and stuff like that. So those are some of my own questions and my initial response, if you will, to like, why don't you get a linear response when the potential changes instead of this nonlinear response? So that's my take on it. And yes, I did use the Nernst equation.
It's a good day. It's a good day.
It's a
Even
good
when
day.
you're sick, if you get to use the Nernst equation, it's the best day.
Yes.
What could be better?
What can be better?
Exactly.
I'm
just glad you answered. I'm just glad you answered because I don't know what ionophore means.
Yeah, I did a quick lookup. I'm like, oh, it sounds like it's sure that you have to mix certain things so that it's uniquely looking at chloride ions, but it sounded like they were looking at like a chloride ion selective electrode, and the ionophore is the membrane material that allows for the selectivity of the chloride ion, I believe, to move between. So that's what I assumed. Of course,
sounds like some sort of sci-fi movie weapon. So
yeah, that's right. The chloride ionophore.
Don't make me break out my ionophore and subjugate take over your secret evil society. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like pick Star Wars, pick some movie. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't know. It just sounds like some cool weapon.
Yeah. We're gonna use the ionophore capacitor to kickstart the hyperdrive space flux jumpinator.
Defibrillator. That's a real thing. I don't know. It's like the retro encabulator commercial.
Yes, the retro encabulator.
That's such a good ad. It's such a good.
After the live stream, you guys look up retro encabulator.
Retro encabulator. Just search on YouTube for retro encabulator. It's like a minute and a quarter. It's not long. And if you watch it and you feel like your brain is melting out your ears because you don't understand what you just watched, that's the point.
Yeah,
exactly. You're not missing anything. It's just amazing. So last question about the apparently with this battery thread we've been talking about here. So just thank you for the explanation. For the last question, how does the ECM size electrochemical circuit model, I assume, account for the potential onset of lithium plating at low temperature? Does this affect the extraction of parameters? It's a good question. To be honest, I would have to do a little bit of research into the literature. I don't know off the top of my head what the impedance response typically is of batteries at low temperature, which is where lithium plating does often occur. Sometimes dendrites form, and it's one of the tricky things about low temperature battery. For example, it's one of the things if you drive an electric car and you live in a cold climate, one of the things almost counterintuitively that I believe, they must, I suppose, electric cars typically have to do is have a heater installed for the battery system. It almost seems counterintuitive because it's like, why would you want to heat the battery? You're going to cause it to explode or something, right? And it's like, well, yeah, if it gets heated too much and overheats, a lot of times you have to cool the batteries down to prevent them from going to thermal runaway and exploding. But if you start your car at, and it's -5 degrees Celsius or something, as the batteries charge and discharge at really, really low temperatures, you can get plating, dendrites, and then also you can get failure. So just kind of mentioning this is a good question because this is a very real kind of a phenomenon. A lot of times the batteries need to be heated slightly to get to, you know, at least, let's just say 10, 15, 20 degrees Celsius before they will sort of operate safely. It depends on the battery chemistry and maybe some other things. But now that being said, again, without knowing really precisely what the impedance response is of a system under low temperature where battery lithium plating might be occurring, I can't answer for sure. But my general answer is that it's absolutely possible that this could affect the extraction of parameters, particularly if, of course, to your original question, if the lithium plating and the impedance of that phenomenon it produces a similar time constant to any of the other processes. If it's a similar time constant to the SEI formation or the anode or cathode processes, then yeah, you might get sort of a combined semicircle that's difficult to deconvolute and extract, a pure parameter, I guess, right? And that, would also make sense if you think about it from the perspective of if you're getting lithium plating, it might be like, lithium plating on the cathode or something like that during, charge or discharge. I guess it'd be during discharge if it's on the cathode, but the impedance that you get, for instance, of the cathode would then, could in theory include that lithium plating process because it's happening at the cathode. And so, yeah, I mean, very possibly if you're trying to extract the parameter, the charge transfer resistance of just the cathode process or something, you might not be able to because you have lithium plating and you have the cathode, charge discharge reaction, and they're all happening in parallel basically or something like that. So they'll be combined and it won't be sort of able to be deconvoluted. So that's all I can say about that. Because I would encourage you to look in the literature and see what impedance plots typically look like. I'd have to look. I didn't do. One of my colleagues when I was a postdoc, I think, did some like state of health, different kinds of studies of batteries under different temperature. I did some temperature stuff, but I mostly went up. I didn't usually go down, and so I don't actually have a lot of experience with like low temperature impedance in batteries and what it looks like. So I can't know for certain. So like, I would draw for you what the Nyquist plot looks like, but I don't know personally too well. So that's a good question. We're getting good questions today, good battery questions and questions that lead to the Nernst equation. So
yes, yeah. But I feel like this next question or conversation you've had to from Nyquist is it's been you have a new hill.
It's my cross to bear.
On. Your cross to bear.
It's like you with the potential window, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The thing is, I don't mind this. I don't know why. I'm not going to say I love it as much as you love the Nernst equation, but I don't mind doing this. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, Nyquist is asking basically if you can give an example of doing a calculation for the half cell equations of the electrode potential of a galvanic cell, in particular a Daniell cell or Daniell cell. We still don't know exactly how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
But he mostly just has doubts about the nature of the equation, which one's the oxidation, which one's the reduction, which one's the cathode, which one's the anode, when you're doing the math, so that it all kind of works out. Yeah, basically.
Well, I'm happy to again talk about the Daniell equation or the Daniell cell, whatever you call it. In this case, what I'll do is I'll talk about it, but I'll try to answer more of your specifics, which is which one's the oxidation, which one's reduction, and just kind of focus on the half reactions. Mostly I usually just sort of draw the cell and talk about it in a general sense, which I will do, but I'll try to direct it towards your specific inquiries. So this is the very famous, of course, Daniell cell, named after still someone I've never looked up, someone probably named Daniell. You'd think one of these days, every time I do this, I'm like, oh yeah, I should look up the history of this or whatever. Wait, hang on. John Frederick Daniell. Okay, yeah, British chemist and meteorologist. Okay, great. So now I just learned. It's named
Now you have
after-
the history behind it.
I just Googled it quickly so I'd get the name right. I just make sure. Every time I do this, I realize that I want to like give the attribution or whatever, and I like always forget or whatever. All right. The Daniell cell consists of basically two solutions. I drew these way too far apart. Why are these? I was thinking I'd need space to write the equations, but now it's like going to be a weird transition.
If you want to, you could use like the lasso tool and move.
Move them closer. Oh, that's
you could move them closer. I think you could do that.
Look at that.
Yeah.
What an idea. All right, I'm going to move them even closer. Yeah, get cozy, guys. All right, thank you. Very nice. All right, they're closer. All right, so the Daniell cell consists of two sides here. Okay, so we're going to have, I'm going to try to color code this so it's like makes sense here. I'd like to use blue for the anode. I'll put the anode over here, I guess. Anode. I know I use blue for like the water also, but bear with me. I'll put the cathode on the right with the red color. All right. On the cathode side, sort of makes sense because copper is kind of red-ish, right? We're going to have a piece of copper metal, okay? On the anode side, I know zinc isn't blue, but anyway, just for consistency, this is going to be a piece of zinc, right? That is the anode side. It's a zinc metal. In the solution, we're going to have zinc sulfate, ZnSO4. And on the cathode solution, we're going to have copper sulfate, copper 2 sulfate. Okay. We are going to connect these two metals to like an external like source or just electrically with a wire of some kind or a potentiostat or a multimeter, whatever you want, right? That's for electrons to flow. And we have to have neutral, like neutrality, electro neutrality. So electrons are going to flow. I guess I'll just give up the part of the game here. They're going to go this direction. Okay. Electrons are going to go from the anode to the cathode. Okay. So electrons are going to go this way. That's the direction. So what we have to have then is a similar flow of positive charge from the left to the right to balance this out charge-wise, or negatives going from right to left. So what we do is we connect a salt bridge, some method of transport of ions from the two solutions, but not, this is where you have a membrane or even like a cloth or a towel or a tube. And you can imagine that we'll have sulfate ions, for instance. SO4 2 minus can travel in the other direction. SO4 2 minus can travel from right to left. Or it's unclear to me. You could also have zinc plus traveling from left to right. That can't happen. You'll end up with a little bit of zinc in the right solution over time because that would also balance out the charge. But let's just simplify it here for now. All right, now let's get to the half reactions because that's kind of your question here. So the anode is so called because it is the side where the oxidation occurs, the oxidation reaction. So the oxidation reaction that occurs on this side is that zinc metal, solid, right? I'm going to draw reversible arrows because these are technically reversible reactions, but goes to zinc 2 plus, which is like aqueous, plus 2 electrons. Okay. Now the 2 electrons are what's going through this external circuit to the copper cathode. Cathode is so called because that's where the reduction happens. And so the reduction is where copper 2 plus, that's in solution already, that's aqueous, plus the 2 electrons that migrated through the external circuit. Again, I'll draw this reversible here, make copper solid. All right. Now, I'll just talk through a few things. Some of this is sort of basics of electrochemistry, if you will. When we talk about these reactions, they have standard potentials, right? So the standard potentials of these reactions, when they're typically written as reductions, note that I wrote this one as an oxidation, but I'll talk about that in a second. The standard potential is 340. Is that what this one is? 340. Yeah, 340. Is 0.34 volts. Okay, that is the standard potential of the cathode. The standard potential of the anode is it's 76, minus 0.70. Let me just check out. Yeah, minus 0.70. I pulled it up because I always feel like I'm going to forget the numbers. All right, minus 0.76 volts. All right. Now, one of the keys of this in understanding why it is this way, why is the oxidation on this side, the reduction on this side, is the key one word of your question, which is that it's a galvanic cell. Galvanic cell means it is spontaneous. Okay. Now, what are the hallmarks? Some of this is hopefully if you've taken a class in thermodynamics or even electrochemistry class. Spontaneous cells are characterized by positive potential or negative delta G, right? And we know this from the relationship between these two, where delta G is equal to minus NF times E, right? So basically, if my voltage or my potential of my cell is positive, it gives me a negative Gibbs free energy. And that means it's a spontaneous process. It's a galvanic process. So the opposite would be a negative potential or negative voltage, which would give a positive delta G. That would be a non-spontaneous process. That would be an electrolytic cell. So a Daniell cell is a galvanic, spontaneous process. And so that happens because we take the voltage or the potential of the cell, E cell, is equal to the potential or the voltage of the cathode minus the voltage of the potential of the anode. So I have 0.34. 34. I'm not daring to do the undo because my program might crash. Minus 0.34. Sorry about the line through it. Minus a negative 0.76. Right? So this is where that value comes into play. We get positive 1.1 volts. It's a positive number, so it's spontaneous. So this negative anode, potential comes into play. Now, what this means practically, right, is that this half cell reaction is that zinc starts to degrade, the zinc metal. It's oxidizing, so the zinc is starting to go away over time. It's relatively slow. It's not like this is going to get dissolved in 10 minutes, but it is technically getting oxidized. We're getting more zinc 2+ ions in solution over time. This zinc metal is starting to disappear before our very eyes. Okay. The copper, on the other hand, is growing. It's getting bigger. It's getting warts and growths, and it's growing. And the copper is plating from solution onto itself. So hopefully there's a few last things I'll say about this. One of them is that I just showed you mathematically that this is spontaneous because I have a positive voltage where I have a negative delta G. And when I subtract the cathode from the anode and cathode standard potentials, I get a positive number. Another way to simply explain this is even if you don't remember or know anything about these expressions, electrochemistry, the thermodynamics, even if you don't remember any of these that mean they're spontaneous, I can kind of explain it a different way, which is that if you put this cell together the way that I've described it, and you connect the zinc and the copper metal to just with a wire, and you get a salt bridge connecting the two solutions, this is what will happen, whether you like it or not. The copper will start to grow, and the zinc will start to dissolve. So the numbers that I've shown and the thermodynamics that I've explained are our way of describing what's happening. Physically, this is what will happen. The zinc will start to dissolve and go away because thermodynamically, if you're asking, this is a weird answer, but I kind of sometimes, I'm an engineer, I can't help myself. I don't always answer the way Alex will answer it in a smart way. I'll answer it in a very basic way, which is to say, why does the zinc go this way and why does the copper go this way? Like why does the copper, go in the reduction and why does the zinc go in the oxidation? And partly my answer is all of this thermodynamics. And partly my answer is if you put this cell together, that's what's going to happen. It's like, why? Try it. See what happens. See if you put these together. See if you get the zinc to grow. It's not going to happen. The zinc is going to start to dissolve. This is just how there's other deeper answers, like where the energy band is of each of these things and why one is favored to happen. It's like energetically, this is what's going to happen. The zinc energetically wants to, in this case, give up 2 electrons and become in the +2 state. And the copper energetically, at the same time, wants to gain 2 electrons and become solid copper. And those things together combined make a very happy, spontaneous system with a voltage of more than a volt. So it's quite favored. So there you have it. I don't know if there's any follow-ups here.
There was one follow-up.
Sure.
Which was I basically just asked if you can explain a little bit more about the function of the salt bridge, making electrical neutrality, if it can be explained in more detail. I think maybe you talked a bit about it, but I don't know if there's more. He just wants more discussion about the salt bridge.
It's a good question. This might be I always think about, I guess the way that I think about this is if you didn't have this salt bridge, right? Think about what happens if you don't. I'm trying to zoom in, but I'm trying to zoom in just to hear. Anyway, think about what happens if you don't have this salt bridge, right? You'll get a situation where all the charge just. That's a weird choice. I was trying to get.
Yeah.
I was trying to get a highlighter that'll like not cover everything.
Not be super thick.
Yeah, or like be somewhat transparent. I'm not succeeding. So I'm gonna pretend I didn't draw a big pink line for no reason. Anyway,
it's all good.
What you're gonna get if you don't have the salt bridge is that all of your charge is gonna start building up on the right. Now, never mind the fact that again, it's like try making the cell. This is more like an engineering answer for you, but it's like, why the salt bridge? Try making the cell without a salt bridge. See if it works. Hint, it doesn't. Nothing will happen. If you connect zinc and copper like this without this salt bridge here, nothing will happen. You won't get any reaction. You'll get no voltage. Nothing will happen. It's not possible. And the reason is that charge neutrality, correct me in the wording here, Alex. I mean, it's a fundamental of electrochemistry. You have to have charge balance. I don't know. Can you speak to that on a better way than I can?
Yeah, I think what I have observed is, so if you imagine, I don't know if I want to get too like philosophical or anything like that, but
yeah,
I have always viewed that like we know fundamentally like Coulombic attractions and repulsions and stuff like that. It's like if something is charged, it naturally attracts the opposite charge, and that naturally leads to buildups. If you're going to have a buildup of charge, there necessarily has to be a buildup of an opposite charge to counterbalance it, because otherwise you're going to have like repulsive forces and stuff like that. And so in general, we always talk about the concept of like charge and electrical neutrality, which is in a way like if there is going to be a buildup of charge, then whether it's at the electrode on a microscopic level, there will be some balance of charge, like say in the form of like the double layer, that balances that charge. But then macroscopically in this entire cell, You can't have just like a jar of negative charge and a jar of positive charge just separated from one another. There always has to be some kind of counter ion or counter charge to balance it. Otherwise, I mean, you can almost think of it as, all right, well, if I build up some charge, well, it's now very repulsive and it's going to push things away, and then it just stops.
Yeah.
So until I have something that balances it out, there's no more, we're talking about a galvanic system that like releases energy, but if all like, it thermodynamically, it wants to do it, it has the energy, but if you put repulsive or attractive charges, that can create enough energy to stop that reaction from occurring, which is what happens. So the salt bridge has always been a way of electrically connecting the entire circuit. Like all circuits, that's another way of thinking about it, is like in electronics, there always has to be like a closed loop, if you will, in the circuitry. And the closed loop in the electrochemical system is the salt bridge. It literally acts as a wire, but it's not moving electrons, it's moving ions, which are charge carriers. So that's how I think about it fundamentally. And then physically, we know you described like, well, sulfate ion is moving from one side to the other to counteract either the plating or the dissolution of the plating of copper or the dissolution of zinc.
It's like for every 2 electrons that go from the left to the right, 1 sulfate 2 minus needs to go from the right to the left. So there's an equal amount of charge moving. The last way that I'll explain it, and then we'll leave it there. It seems like Nidas is pretty happy with this explanation, but is that electrons, I talked about them being spontaneous, but the reality is that they're spontaneous because there's a potential from each side. And so electrons don't just move for no reason. This is, like electricity, electrochemistry, whatever the sciences you're talking about, electrons moving, there's potential and there's current. Current is the electrons moving, the rate at which they're moving, but the potential is what is causing that. The potential is the driving force that causes electrons to move from one side to the other in one direction or another, whatever. A potential, a field, a difference in potential, whatever. And so if electrons are moving from one side to the other, or whatever, you're just going to get, there has to be an impetus to drive them that way. And it's almost like if the electrons were to keep moving from left to right without a salt bridge, there would be a huge like the voltage would just grow and grow and grow, because you'd have like a huge buildup of charge on one side and a deficiency on the other side. And you would just have this huge electric field almost getting driven, which would cause tons of problems. And it can't happen. Like it can't even really physically happen. And so by having the ions in the salt bridge that can move in the other direction, you prevent this big unstable electric field from being able to form, which would just prevent it from happening in the first place. It's like you could imagine trying to push water through a stuck pipe. It'll just back up on you until there's another way for the water to flow. Then you can push it through and it won't splash back in your face if the water has somewhere else to go. Kind of. I don't know. That's a weird way to think about it, but water and electricity are similar in the way they flow, actually. The electricity has always been interesting, or plumbing, plumbing and electrical circuits have always had like similar analogies. I've always found this gets back into like the whole concept of potential in general, which is like has its own philosophy that. And you have a whole webinar on it. Yeah, I have a whole webinar on it, but even that is like, that's just to get people to like have a good understanding of it in the context of electrochemistry. Yeah. But then by itself,
actually, it was actually interesting. I was like a total side note, because I know there's another question about like, GITT and stuff, but someone actually used like potential in like for people, it's like when you go to like throughout your education, you're learning lots and lots of stuff. You get different degrees and you build up a lot of potential, which is to say you could do a bunch of things, right? Oh, you get like a bachelor's degree in this. That gives you the potential to do a variety of different careers. It's also if you get a PhD, that gives you the potential to have certain types of careers or certain types of jobs and stuff like that. But until you actually do it, it doesn't, that's why you can have a battery. It's stored potential energy. It's only until you actually connect it to something so it does anything, that's when you actually put it to use. And so I think like, people in education, the same analogy works. If you're using the thing, a lot of people have stored potential, but they either don't use it or not use it, and just like a little battery. So that works.
And just like if you don't have a salt bridge, you won't accomplish any of your potential.
That's right. That's right. If you don't have a salt bridge, you can't accomplish any of your potential.
That's a very strange analogy. That doesn't make any sense.
Analogy.
Oh, that's funny.
Should
I talk about?
Do you want to talk about GITT?
There's a quick question about boron doped diamond. I just wanted to mention there was at one point we had some BDD electrodes. For a variety of reasons, we don't sell them really. We had one round of like glassy carbon with a BDD film that we had made once upon a time. Boron doped diamond.
Have any disc inserts?
I'm not sure if we still have any. We might. To be honest, it's not. It's we've sold a few. Like we made. So the story of this is that at one point in time, like years ago, we one of our colleagues found we didn't do this ourselves. Like we don't have in our factory, I think like the capability of making a boron doped diamond film or electrode. And so we found a laboratory, I think that just we were looking into it as a manufacturer, right, as a company that sells electrodes, to make boron doped diamond. We had some glassy carbon disc inserts that we got coated with a BDD film, and there were some difficulties with it from some of our early like users and testers of the BDD film. The long and short is that it's tricky. Some people had gone to some, as is the point of BDD, it's like it extends the potential window of a glassy carbon in aqueous. You can go to 1.5 volts or 2 volts, or you can go pretty high or low because it's very inactive. Essentially that's why BDD is used. But we had some early users who went to some very extreme, I forget, it was really high or it was really low potential, and they found there was some film degradation, there was some issues. Now, if you're a researcher and you make a film and you have issues, you just got to keep making the film and trying. As a company making and selling the product, we can't sell defective products. Like, we're just not going to do that, right? So the short answer is that we may have some of these discs remaining that have this BDD film. The longer answer is that if you were to want to buy these, you would be buying them with a heavy like disclaimer from us, which is something to the effect of, we cannot guarantee this is going to work ideally. We're probably not going to make any more. We're probably not going to do this process again because we weren't, perfectly satisfied from a manufacturing perspective about the quality of these films. Just for what it's worth, right? When we sell a platinum disc or a glassy carbon disc or a rotator or a potentiostat, like nothing's perfect, but we're satisfied with the quality of the products that our company makes, obviously. And we aren't going to be sort of permanently selling these BDD discs or making more because it's just difficult to control from a quality perspective. So please inquire with our representative in India, Batsal.
I did look. We don't have any. So
we don't have any left.
Yeah, we don't have any left.
There were 2 different part numbers. Someone might have purchased the last of them.
No, I only checked. I guess I only checked one. But
yeah, I can't honestly. Still. I can look up later. I'd have to look up. There were like 2 part numbers with it. Maybe we're out of both. You might be right. Like I said, we had some. There were a few customers, mostly here in the U.S., over the years who have asked, and I gave the same disclaimer, like, you can purchase these just so you're aware.
Oh, never mind. We have 2. We have 2 of the normal one. We have 0 of a different one, and then
there's a B. It's GC BDD. I think is the part number, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we might have 2 left.
So we do have 2. So yeah.
Heavy so we might have 2 disc inserts left. Again, inquire with our representative. If you're purchasing in India, you have to purchase through our distributor. But they can if you tell them what you want, they will inquire with me most probably, and I can let them. I'll send along the information. I have a PDF that explains what I just said and gives some testing data and things like that to just give you full knowledge of what, if you're purchasing it, just so you're aware. This is the situation. Like, to a certain extent, we can't really guarantee everything. I just want to be perfectly honest about it. Okay, that's all. So, yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, GITT is the next one, I guess.
Yeah. Someone was just asking.
Tell us about
GITT.
Well, I would love to tell you about GITT. Let me pull up. I'll draw out the waveform for you. Okay, here, let's see. So GITT stands for, I should probably do the text box, right? Every time I draw, it's just a total disaster. So GITT stands for galvanostatic intermittent, of course, it helps if you can actually type, titration technique, right? So if you break this down, galvanostatic, so I'm controlling the current. Intermittent, so it's like on and off. It's pretty small. I'll make this bigger, right? Okay, there we go. Nice and readable. And then titration is like you're filling up something little by little. And it's a technique because it's something you do. I don't know. Whatever. Okay, so it's typically used on batteries. It's typically used for a sort of limited discharge kind of method, and it helps elucidate information about diffusion properties. So what you typically have here, I'm going to draw a graph of the waveform. So this will be time. Okay, I'm going to put, let's see, I want to put potential on the left axis. So this will be potential or voltage. The battery, sometimes we call it voltage. Drives my colleagues nuts, but that's just what we do. And here I'll draw the current. All right. So this is 0 current, right? This would be, let's say, charging currents positively. This is a mess because this I looks like it's strange. This is current here. Current, right? Okay. I just wanted the I was blending in with the 0 and it looked really weird. And anyway, I just want to be clear. This would be like discharging. So this is negative current. All right. So positive, negative, charge, discharging. Now the waveform is going to be something like, I'm going to apply some positive current for some amount of time and then 0 current for some amount of time. I'm going to repeat this as many times as is necessary, okay? And I'll get to what necessary means in just a second. So I'm going to repeat this for a while, okay? And then eventually, I'm going to have a turnaround and I'm going to start doing it the opposite way. And I'm going to do that for a while. Now, what does a while mean, right? I'm only going to, how many did I do? Like 5 or 6 of these little things. All right, I'll just do one more. So I'm enjoying drawing here. Okay. Now, what does the voltage do, right? So this is the current waveform. I'm going to do a bunch of positive currents for a while, followed by negative currents. Now, the voltage, I have my lower voltage, if you will, or potential. I know I'm using V and E interchangeably here, so I'm breaking all the rules. I have an upper voltage. Now, for a battery, this might be something like, let's say like 3 volts. This might be like 4.2 volts, something like that. It's typical for like a lithium-ion battery. Just examples. What I'm going to do is it probably started off somewhere, whatever voltage my battery started at. When I am applying a positive current, I'm charging the battery. So the voltage will start to increase, right? It's going to increase a little. Now at this point here, I'm at 0. So the voltage will decay a little. Oh, I'm back to a positive. It's going to go up more. And now my current is 0. It's going to decay a little bit. And then it's going to go positive again. And then it decays a little. Positive again. I think I'm going to work this out pretty well. Decays a little at 0. And then my last positive, step, this is my upper potential. Let's say I hit my upper limit here, right? Great. Now I have one last, this is 0 current, so this is OCP or whatever, right? So there's always a little bit of a, decay or whatever you want to say, right? All right, this is my lower voltage limit. I'll just draw these lines over so you can kind of see the double axis plot here, right? Now I'm at a discharge portion of the experiment. And so my voltage will start to decrease. But now I have an open circuit, and so it's going to decay kind of the opposite direction. And then I have discharge, decay. It depends on how big my current is, obviously, how fast this discharges or whatever. So hopefully you get the idea here. Every time the current is 0, it's discharging. Every time the current is 0, it's at open circuit. And every time the current is positive or negative, it's charging or discharging. And so in this case, I got down to my lower limit, and then I, whatever. So while the current is on, it's charging or discharging. While the current is off, it's at open circuit voltage, OCP. So it's kind of just like a typical galvanostatic charge discharge. But I'm adding in rest steps. So it's like twice as long. So this is the one thing about GITT that's tricky, is that it's like if you want to do charge discharge tests, you double the time. Because however long it takes to charge up at like you're doing C over 5, it takes 5 hours. Well, if you have equal amounts of rest time, then it's going to take 10 hours to charge up, because I have 5 hours of charge and 5 hours of rest in the same, thing. So it takes a long time. I'm not going to get into all the mathematics. I have an article I'll show. I'll find it and just show it very briefly here. But you might ask the question, why would I bother? Why would I just charge it up? Why would I bother resting in between? Well, there's benefits, because one of the things that I can get from this intermittent titration kind of a thing is I can get a measure of the diffusion coefficient specifically. So the application of the current and then the release of the current, the way that it behaves, I guess, mathematically, allows me to calculate the diffusion coefficient. So here's an article. This is on our website. You can look at this. If you come to our website and you just search for GITT or PIT, or go to the support here, this is an article that shows the intermittent titration technique. So this gives you, it's the same waveform I just drew in more detail. And mathematically, this is, here it is. So diffusion coefficient calculation from GITT. So you can get the diffusion coefficient calculated. And for example, our company, our software does this automatically for you. If you do a GITT experiment, you'll get that measurement. So there you go. That's the GITT experiment. Let me just put the link for that article in the chat, just for your reference. As soon as my computer responds. There we go. Okay, so this is GITT support article. Okay. So there you go. That's GITT.
Nice. Great explanation. All right, we got like about 15 minutes left. So we're going to try to get through as many of these as we can. Again, just the order that we received the questions. Mm-hmm. How does a glass membrane in potentiometry act as an insulator? So glass in and of itself is an insulator, but glass membranes are actually porous. It's not just a solid chunk of glass, it tends to be porous. So it's lots and lots and lots of little tiny balls, if you will, of glass, or glass with lots of holes in it, I guess is a better description. And those pore sizes can be pretty small on the micron length scale, if you will. And as a result, it's able to allow solution to move through it just very, very slowly. So it's ionically so it ends up being ionically conductive for solution to pass through and for ions to pass through. But it's still which is good. It allows the whole system to remain electrically conductive, so the experiments work. But it also is insulating in the sense that, like, all right, well, solution from one side isn't just going to pass through to the other side. It does that on a very, very long time scale for potentiometry. So I think that's the nature of the question that you're asking. I just wanted to give you a quick answer so that you had an answer. And actually, kind of on a similar note, we have a question. What is the properties of an insulator? I mean, insulators are a thing. It's funny. We always talk about conductors and semiconductors, and insulators are just things that don't do either of those. It's unable to conduct electricity or heat.
Well, the problem again is it's a similar thing to conductor, or we talk about conductivity. Do you mean electric? People have asked about measuring conductivity via electrochemistry. And usually what they mean is ionic conductivity, because measuring electrical conductivity is typically something you do like spectroscopically or something like that. Measuring the band gap and things like that. It's like electrical properties. So again, to your point right there, it's like if they're talking about electrical insulator, it's about having a wide band gap that electrons can't bridge, to get into the conduction band, basically. But if you're talking about other kinds of insulators, it's like heat insulator or ionic insulator. Like it's almost like too vague. It's like, what are the properties of it? Like, what kind of insulator do you mean, right?
That's true. That's true.
An insulator is almost just like you said. It's like it's the yang to the yin to the yang. It's like, what describes all these things conducting? What's an insulator? It's the thing that doesn't do those things, right? It's the thing that doesn't conduct heat, electricity, ions, whatever the thing you're talking about moving. It's the thing that doesn't do those, right?
Going through that. Hopefully that answers the question, maybe a little bit. This one question. Can I give a one-line understanding of each concept, or one-liner understanding? I don't think one line. I'd have to think a lot about like one line to describe the concept behind CV and GCD, because there's a lot of stuff.
There's so much to say. I know. I mean, you could say, well, you could do CV. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's hard to do brevity. Obviously, you have a whole 1 hour webinar talking about CV, and now it's like, put your whole webinar into one sentence.
Yeah, well, it's a, let's see, a one-line understanding of cyclic voltammetry. It's a cyclic linear sweep voltammetric technique used to scan for redox reactions and activity.
That works.
Yeah, that's what I come up with on the spot.
I like it.
Yeah, and GCD, again, I'll think discharge, charging and discharging the battery.
Yeah, that works. Applying a positive and negative current, alternatively, to cause your battery's voltage to reach an upper and or lower limit.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's it. Okay.
Nothing more needed. We don't need.
Nothing more needed.
we don't need any complicated explanations or webinars or anything.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. Yeah, we have everything.
Okay, let's cut through these. I think we can get through this hopefully in the next 9 minutes or so.
Yeah.
There was a question. I'm not sure we can really talk too much about this. Can you please tell anyway so as to learn the organic reactions? There's so many preparation reactions like haloalkanes and haloarenes. There's so many. You're asking the wrong guy. Organic chemistry was one of my least favorite classes in college.
Yeah.
I went to undergraduate. I was an undergraduate
almost 20 years ago.
I was going to say it's been at least 15 years. What it's 26. Good grief. Yeah, it's been more than
my 20-year reunion will be in 2 years.
Yeah, it's been more than 15 years. Even then, I remember thinking, why do I have to remember the Friedel-Crafts reaction when I can just look it up online later? I can't imagine in 2026 why that should be more true. So I always had a pretty good, like I did fine in school. I got a pretty good memory for stuff, but I remember even then where I had to memorize just reactions about what happens. There's utility to that. So for example, I just showed how the Daniell cell works. And I other than just quickly Googling what the voltages are, because I just always forget, it's plus 340 and minus 76 and whatever. And figuring out John Daniell or whatever the guy's name is, I can do that from memory. So there is benefit to like knowing stuff just without, I'm not necessarily denigrating the exercise, shall we say, of learning all of these reactions and all of these things. But to a certain degree, it's like we're all walking around with these amazing, information machines in our pocket. And it's like at any moment in time, if I need to know what the Friedel-Crafts, that's always one that comes to mind for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
whatever like specific, organic chemistry reaction is, I can just Google it or ask, or, whatever, or I can go upstairs and, into my office and get my organic chemistry textbook and just look at it. Like, so, I'm not the one to ask about like, how do you learn all these things? It's like that, it is what it is. Organic chemistry is very much like a lot of times you're just learning a whole bunch of different reactions, not even necessarily why they happen. You're just learning them. Like that was what I saw it doing. It's like, you're just memorizing that if you put like this thing with that thing and you add heat and you like, dance on your left foot for an hour, you get this chemical. That's just a reaction. You have to just remember that. So,
I think my recommendation is just try to do as many problem sets as you can. One of my biggest mistakes doing organic chemistry was I didn't do enough problem sets. I always just like reviewed my notes from like lecture. I reviewed it a lot, but it wasn't the kind of active learning required to like really get the idea in your, like, to really get the concept in your head of like an SN1, SN2 reaction. It's just like, so that you can just kind of see it in the molecule. Like, when you see the molecule, you can kind of see where the reaction sites are. And then you can kind of make a guess as to like, that's a reactive area, or that's a reactive area, or something like that. And then I know how this thing will react. It's hard. I mean, I think it's just super hard. And yeah, there are many, many, many reactions. I'd say my only thing that might be helpful is, I think at the end of the day, there's one thing that I always thought was very interesting about organic chemistry was a lot of the rationale between any reaction that you observed, it all had to do with like 2 or 3 concepts. It was like, is it an acid base, which was another way of saying like, is it electron donating or electron withdrawing? Like, is that part of the molecule able to accept or donate electrons? Lewis structures, just like, is there a lot, which is kind of the same thing, like, is there a lot of electron density in one area versus another? And then resonance structures, it's just like, can you redraw that same molecule into a different configuration that allows the reaction to occur? And that was it. It's like, every rationale that they had for every reaction all boiled down to like, I remember learning about, what is it, like the carbonyl, like C double bond to O. And all they did in class was like, well, we just move the double bond to like the O, so it's an O minus, and then we have a C plus. And now you can describe why if there's H plus in solution, if there's acid, you'll start to form alcohols, and then you'll form another thing with like the carbon plus. And it's like, oh, okay. But every reaction just like breaks down to that, like that model. It's like, is there an equivalent Lewis structure that has a reactivity, and then you can rationalize it from there. But yeah, at a certain point, you just have to memorize it. You can't rationalize like a Diels-Alder reaction or something like that. It's like 6 electrons just kind of dancing around into a ring. Get out of here! You can't.
You know, ironically, you'd think I'd love organic chemistry more, because as you said that, I just realized like, oh, this is just like engineering chemistry, even though it has nothing to do with engineering. Because a lot of times organic chemistry is exactly that. It's like, hey, if you throw this crap together, this happens. Why? Don't know. It just does. And if you memorize it, that's good. Next reaction. It's like, yeah, but why does this happen? Who cares? We don't know. It's like,
the reason was like, well, the electrons have to. I mean, the Diels-Alder reaction, I remember, was just like, hold on, I'm gonna butcher some organic chemistry. Let's
oh boy,
let's go. So I vaguely remember they were like, all right, if you got this, and then there was one of these guys, what happens? It's like this guy goes here, this guy goes here, and then like this guy goes here, and then it forms like this. And I think like what one of these is like there's a double bond somewhere in here, but it's like there's like a little dance. They called it a dance. You know, the electrons are just doing the little dance, having a fun old time. I'm like, what? I have like such a hard time convincing anyone of like even double electron transfers occurring, like two electrons going, and we got 6 moving in a little dance to form some bonds. Oh wait, no, this guy goes here. There we go. Yeah, it's
is it like, you know, like Sandstorm playing in the, you know, in
microscope? Yeah, it's like that's like
microscopic sandstorm.
Microscopic sandstorm. It's like, that's it. That's the logic behind this, is like these 6 electrons all move at the same time to make this guy.
Of course.
That's how they rationalized it.
Of course. Duh.
Of course. Duh.
I mean, what's so hard to understand? I don't see the problem.
Yeah.
It's just an electron dance. That's perfectly reasonable.
That's right. That's right. All right, we got 1 minute.
One last question. I don't know if you can talk about disappearing redox peaks really quick, but then So 369 Omniverse says in CV, redox peaks are completely vanishing after the first cycle. In some cases, on oxidation reduction, some cases diminish cycle by cycle for some material. Or for same material, how to identify the reason and its solution. So one of the reasons could be, I talked like an hour ago or 2 hours ago or 5 years ago about this thin film thing I talked about. I was answering a question about making the film on your electrode. So one possibility is you have a material and a film on your substrate, and your film is falling off. I mean, if you have like a peak for some corresponding to some redox process, and the material, the electrode, the film for which that is occurring, whatever, is falling off, delaminating, that could be the reason. The material could be deactivating for one reason or another. There's a lot of cases, like if you have platinum and there's carbon monoxide poisoning can cause the platinum to deactivate. It can clog up the active sites. That's just one random example that comes to mind. There's a million other catalysts and things that could possibly contribute to this. You could have the analyte or the reagent running out or leaving, and so it's not there. I mean, there's so many possible reasons for this. I mean, it's almost like that those are just the first few that come to mind, but it's almost like where do we start, where do we end, right? Reasons why redox peaks are there and then suddenly not there. It's like there could be so many reasons, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think oftentimes I would also, I would visually look at your electrode, because I think a lot of this is all very electrode dependent. I would look at your electrode before the CV, and then I would do the CV. If I only get one cycle, I'd look back at my electrode, and oftentimes I sometimes find that like it visually looks different. It's like the reaction that you think might be happening is not what you think is happening. It's not like a regular redox reaction. You may literally be plating or oxidizing something on the surface that then makes your electrode insulating for like the redox reaction that you think is happening. And similarly, what Neil said, like if you deposited a film on your electrode, stripped it off in one cycle, it's now floating out in, and semi-infinite diffusion away from the electrode, and you're not going to see that redox feature again.
Semi-infinite.
Yeah. That's right.
And you just said too, for 3 electrodes, 6 molar KOH. Well, 6 molar KOH is quite aggressive.
Yeah.
Something could be dissolving or getting kind of attacked. Alkaline, especially strong alkaline, is very, very aggressive. So it's certainly possible. There's some something kind of very destructive happening, let's just say, to any of the electrodes possibly.
Coated on stainless steel nickel foam as well.
Yeah, I mean, those in theory can work in alkaline, but coating is falling off. Something's happening. Electrodes are degrading somehow. There's a lot of options, really. Again, it's more like we probably have to see some of the data, maybe see a picture of the setup. We need a little more detail, but hopefully that's just a few ways for you to start probing the things and look for possible causes. But
and visually look, I don't know, there's a part of me that feels like when you put stainless steel in very strong potassium hydroxide, it is, I don't know, it's like you oxidize it, you reduce it, it's not going to look exactly the same as you initially put it. But I haven't worked with that much stainless steel, but those are strong conditions. 6 molar, and nickel maybe a little more stable, but or you could be forming, I mean, what is it? You probably are forming like crazy oxides or something on the surface. Maybe, possibly. Not so sure. Using another technique like XPS or EDX or something to look for the presence of oxides may also be helpful. That might tip you off.
That's a good point. Well, good luck, I guess.
Yeah.
And we're gonna call it there. I think. Do we know when the next time we're gonna do this is?
I should be back next week.
Oh, cool.
Friday.
Okay. And then the following week. No. Then it'll be a few weeks off, probably. So.
Yeah, but I think I should be back next week, and maybe even the week after that.
A rare winning streak for us.
Yeah, it's like July was crazy because it's like, well, there was nothing, it was just like one thing after another. But most of the things I have end on a Thursday, which means my Friday is back. I might still be here, like in like my YouTube studio doing stuff, but I think so. We'll plan it. So.
All right. Well, that works good. That's good. That means that we don't have to wait forever. And maybe you and I will be in the same room next week. Who knows?
Yeah, that's right.
It's possible. Can't guarantee.
It's possible.
So, as always, everybody, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and we hope we've done right by you and tried to answer all your questions. And we didn't even get too sidetracked today. It's impressive. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see everybody next week. I hope everybody has a great rest of your week ahead, and we'll see everybody next time.